Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Bo Bichette to Philadelphia conversation just got a lot more serious, and we need to break down what this actually looks like if it happens. The mailbag questions hit on all the right pressure points: roster construction, catching replacements, whether this is real or just smoke, and how you'd actually build a lineup around adding Bichette. Let's work through this systematically because the complications are significant and the decisions aren't simple. Starting with the infield arrangement, because that's where everything cascades from. If Bichette comes to Philadelphia, either Alec Bohm or Bryson Stott has to go, and the decision comes down to which player brings back more value in a trade. Bohm is making over $10 million in his final arbitration year before hitting free agency. That's a tradable contract for a productive player, but it's also a player on an expiring deal, which limits return value. Teams know they're getting 1 year of control unless they can extend him. Stott has more team control remaining, which theoretically makes him more valuable in trade discussions, but there's concern about his struggles against left-handed pitching, severe enough that the Phillies have been platooning him. That reduces his perceived value to other organizations who might view him as a platoon player rather than an everyday option. So you've got competing factors: Bohm's higher immediate salary and expiring contract versus Stott's control. But platoon concerns. The cleanest positional fit is probably Bichette at third base, Trea Turner staying at shortstop, and Stott at second base. Turner spent significant effort improving his defense at shortstop last year and by all accounts made real progress. Asking him to move positions again after that investment doesn't make organizational sense, and he likely wouldn't be receptive to it anyway. Bichette has shown willingness to move off shortstop, which creates the flexibility to slot him at third without creating ego or political issues. Some people have suggested moving Turner to the outfield or second base to open shortstop for Bichette, but that's overcomplicating things unnecessarily. You'd be shuffling multiple positions to accommodate one player when a simpler solution exists. Keep Turner where he's finally comfortable and productive, put Bichette at third, maintain Stott at second, and you've got an athletic, offensively capable infield without defensive chaos. The catching situation is where this gets genuinely problematic if JT Realmuto doesn't return. There just aren't great options available. Ryan Jeffers from Minnesota gets mentioned most frequently. He hit .266 last year, provides some offensive contribution, and can handle the defensive responsibilities. But he's not giving you that impact bat that makes you excited about the acquisition. He's a competent replacement who keeps things functional but doesn't move the needle. The bigger concern is what you lose beyond Realmuto's bat. The pitching staff trusts him completely. Multiple pitchers have publicly credited him with their development and success. There's institutional knowledge there, familiarity with how each pitcher works, game-calling instincts built over years of working together. You can't replace that easily with a one-year rental catcher who's learning your staff on the fly. Rafael Marchand and Garrett Stubbs are fine as depth pieces, but asking them to handle regular catching duties creates problems. You might be comfortable with them catching once every 6 or 7 games, giving your starter a breather, but as everyday options splitting time, that feels insufficient for a team with championship aspirations and a pitching staff that requires careful management. The Phillies need to resolve the Realmuto situation quickly because every day that passes without clarity limits their options elsewhere. If he's not coming back, they need to pivot to acquiring a catcher immediately. Spring training is 4 weeks away. You can't enter camp without a plan at one of your most important defensive positions. At some point, there has to be a deadline in negotiations where both sides either find common ground or move on. The Don Mattingly connection with Bichette is interesting and probably more meaningful than people realize. Players care about familiarity when they're changing organizations. Having a coach you already trust, someone who knows your swing mechanics and your approach, someone you've succeeded with before, that creates comfort in an uncertain transition. Mattingly's presence on the staff isn't the deciding factor, but it removes one variable that might otherwise create hesitation. Is this real or just leverage? Based on the reporting from Matt Gelb and Ken Rosenthal, this is legitimate interest with actual organizational work being done. The Phillies have mapped out the roster implications. They've scheduled a meeting with Bichette. They're seriously evaluating whether this makes sense. That doesn't guarantee it happens, but it's far beyond casual tire kicking or agents manufacturing interest to drive up prices. John Middleton has consistently demonstrated willingness to spend money to win. The issue hasn't been financial commitment, it's been postseason performance not matching regular season success. If the front office believes Bichette represents a meaningful upgrade that increases championship probability, Middleton will approve the spending. The question is whether the baseball operations staff is convinced the upgrade justifies the complications it creates elsewhere on the roster. Lineup construction with Bichette gets fascinating because suddenly you've got multiple 300 hitters and legitimate depth throughout the order. Trea Turner isn't moving from leadoff. He's earned that spot and excelled there. The question is where everyone else slots in. Bichette hitting anywhere from 2 through 4 makes sense depending on how you want to structure things. One interesting option is moving Bryce Harper to the 2-hole, putting Bichette third, and dropping Kyle Schwarber to fourth. And that gives you 2 300 hitters in your first 3 spots. Virtually guarantees Schwarber gets an at-bat in the first inning with runners on base frequently and creates length throughout the lineup. You're no longer front-loading all your production and hoping someone delivers. You've got threats 1 through 4 that force opposing pitchers into impossible decisions. Schwarber hitting fourth for the first time in years might actually unlock something. He's been so valuable leading off because he sees pitches and gets on base, but there's always been the question of whether his power plays better in a run production spot. With Turner, Harper, and Bichette in front of him, Schwarber would see better pitches and have more RBI opportunities than he's had batting leadoff. The bottom of the order becomes Edmundo Sosa or whoever wins the utility role, plus your catching situation, plus potentially Bryson Stott if he stays. That's not intimidating, but it's functional, especially if your top 4 is producing consistently. You're banking on the top of the lineup carrying enough offensive weight that the bottom third can be merely adequate rather than needing to contribute major production. What makes this challenging is that every decision creates cascading effects. Trade Bowman, you need Bichette at third. Keep Stott, and you're banking on him improving against lefties. Move on from Real Muto, and you're replacing irreplaceable institutional knowledge. Each choice creates new problems that require additional solutions, and at some point you have to decide if the cumulative complications are worth the upgrade Bichette provides. The postseason performance angle matters too. Bichette has proven he can perform in high-leverage playoff situations. The Phillies' recent postseason failures aren't about lack of talent. They're about key players not delivering when it matters most. Adding someone with demonstrated playoff success doesn't guarantee future October performance, but it provides evidence that he won't shrink when the stakes increase. This all comes down to whether the Phillies believe the window is now and whether they're willing to accept short-term complications for potential championship upside. Standing pat with essentially the same roster that's disappointed in recent Octobers feels like accepting slow decline. Making aggressive moves like acquiring Bichette feels like pushing all in on the current window. Neither choice is without risk, but one represents conviction and the other represents hesitation. The meeting happens soon. We'll know more about mutual interest and financial alignment. Either Philadelphia emerges as a serious destination or they get outbid by other suitors. But the fact that this conversation is happening, that organizational work is being done, that legitimate possibilities exist, that tells you the Phillies are at least willing to consider bold moves that change their championship calculus. Whether they follow through is what we're about to discover. Drop your thoughts on the ideal lineup construction if Bichette actually signs.